Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing an updated Senate prediction. I did my last Senate prediction in the beginning of September and now it's the beginning of October, so I think it's time for an update. Before I start, I'd like to say if you like my content, subscribe to the channel and leave a like and comment. With all that said, let's get into it. So I have all the solid states from my September prediction filled in, and I'm going to start filling in the likely states starting with Ohio. Polls do have this close, but I think J.D. Vance is going to pull this out. He's leading by around 3 to 4 points in the polls, and polls always underestimate Republicans in Ohio. It's probably the worst case of polling in the entire country. Biden was leading or behind by very little, and Trump ended up winning by 8. So Ohio polls are always bad. They're always off in favor of Democrats. Vance is leading. I could see this being a solid race, but right now I think it's going to be likely Republican. The next likely state is going to be the state of Florida. It's a very similar story to Ohio. Polls are usually off in favor of Democrats in Florida, and Rubio's already leading by around 4. Val Demings isn't a super strong candidate. Rubio has the incumbency advantage. I could see this being over 10-point victory, especially the way that Florida is trending. Right now, I think I'm going to keep it as likely Republican, but I could see Rubio breaking that 10-point mark by Election Day. That's all of the likely Republican states, and I'm going to fill in the likely Democrat states, starting with Colorado. Michael Bennett's a strong incumbent. He's pretty popular. Colorado is trending blue very rapidly. Joe O'Dea, the Republican candidate, is not running a great campaign. He's running a moderate campaign, but he's not really energizing the Republican base. I could see this one being solid Democrat, but for now, I am going to keep it as likely Democrat. The final likely Democrat state is a state I actually already have filled in as solid, and that's the state of Washington. There's been more polls recently throughout the month of September that have Washington as being closer than a 10-point race. I think it's going to be very close under that. I think it's probably going to be an 8-point victory. I do think it's going to be to the right of Colorado, which might be a controversial opinion. I do think Republicans are more poised to do better in Washington than Colorado. But I do still think it's a likely Democrat state, so I am calling it likely Democrat. So we have all the solid and likely states out of the way, starting Republicans with 47 seats and Democrats with 46. So now I'm going to cover the toss-up states going from west to east, starting with Nevada. The state of Nevada has been trending right. I talked about this. I made a video about it a couple weeks ago. When I made my prediction last month, I had Laxalt narrowly winning, and he was down in the polls. Now he's up in the polls. He led every single poll in September. However, polls in Nevada are some of the only polls nationwide that tend to overestimate Republicans sometimes. And so although the momentum is in his favor, I am still calling it tilt Republican. I'm not moving it from where it was last month, even though he's doing better, just because I realize that sometimes the polls in Nevada can underestimate Republicans. And even though they didn't in 2020, it's possible they could again because it's a midterm year. So I'm keeping it as likely Republican. Sorry, I meant tilt Republican. In the state of Arizona, polls have tightened up throughout the month of September. Mark Kelly was leading by around 8 points at the time I made my last video. Now he's leading by around 5, and it actually got down to as low as a 4-point lead for him. In 2020, he was leading by around 5 points in the polls on Election Day and ended up only winning by around 2.4. So if the polls continue to narrow, we could see a Masters victory. Right now, I do think Kelly is favored. So I'm calling this race tilt Democrat, but it's definitely not going to be a blowout. It's not likely D like you see some certain forecasts saying. It's definitely going to be a close race, so I'm calling it tilt Democrat. In the state of Wisconsin, it's becoming increasingly clear that Ron Johnson is the clear favorite. When I made my video in September, Ron Johnson was down in the polls. Now he's up by over 2 points. This is the first time that Republicans have led a statewide polling average in Wisconsin since 2014, and even then, they underestimated Republicans. Ron Johnson always outperforms the polls. He's probably going to win by almost 6 points, but right now I think it's probably going to be around 5, so I'm calling Wisconsin lean Republican. It could be likely, but I'm keeping it at lean for now. In the state of Georgia, this one's going to be really close. Polling's gone back and forth between Warnock and Walker. Right now, I do think Walker is a very narrow favorite, so I'm calling it tilt Republican. The energy across the country is just in Republicans' favor right now. I think that's going to help Walker. I think he's going to do better in the suburbs than Trump did. He might regress a little bit in the rurals, but I think the Trump endorsement will probably help shore up the rurals and he's probably going to do better in the suburbs too. Warnock does have the incumbency advantage, so that is why this race is still going to be pretty close, I think. But I do think Walker's the favorite. I also think this race is going to go to a runoff, but I'm pretty sure that whoever gets the most votes in the first round is probably going to get the most votes in the runoff too. This isn't like 2020 where there was, Republican turnout is going to be super low because they were demoralized after 2020. I think it's going to be pretty evenly split in the runoff based on what happened in the first election in November. So I think Walker is going to narrowly win in the runoff. In North Carolina, Ted Budd is consistently leading polls against Cheri Beasley. It looks like it could be close, but again, Republicans do tend to outperform polls in North Carolina. Trump was supposed to lose it in 2016 and 2020, and he ended up winning it. So I think Ted Budd's narrowly favored. Well, not super narrowly. I think he's probably going to win by around 3 or 4 points. My controversial take of the cycle, I guess, is that this is going to be to the left of Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin is going to be more Republican than North Carolina, but I do think Ted Budd's going to win by 3 or 4 points, so I'm calling it lean Republican. In Pennsylvania, polls have narrowed up a lot since I made my last video. Fetterman was leading the polling average by around 8 when I made my last video. Now he's leading by around 4, and it continues to narrow. It seems like the base is coming back for Oz, and he's doing a lot better. If this momentum continues, he'll probably win. I'm not sure if it will. Fetterman is stuck around 48%, though. I don't think either of them are going to get a majority. I do think he's the narrow favorite right now. I do think Oz could win, but right now I think Fetterman is the narrow favorite, so I'm calling it tilt Democrat. Finally, we have the state of New Hampshire. Back when I made my video in September, the primary hadn't even happened here, so we didn't know who the Republican nominee was going to be. Now we know it's Don Bolduc. He is not a great fit for New Hampshire. He's kind of a war hawk, and people in New Hampshire don't really support wars like that. They're a lot more libertarian. They're their own form of libertarianism up there, really. And so I don't think Bolduc's going to do that well. Maggie Hassan isn't super popular, which is why I do still think this race is going to be relatively close. But right now I think Bolduc's probably going to lose by around 4. So I'm calling this state lean Democrat. And with that, I have Republicans regaining the Senate majority with a very slim 51-49 majority. If you like this video, leave a like and comment and subscribe telling me what you think. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.